So we got a question from JJ that had a whole lot of information, but the basics of it is, how do I make the right choice in terms of how I'm funding my rehab? He told us he has an investment property that is recovering from Hurricane Ida, and that in terms of sources for funding, he has a HELOC, he has the option of a 5% loan, he has enough actual cash on hand, he has a no balance 2% back credit card, and he has some insurance money, which is also cash. So he can use any of these as options to get the house repaired. And after he finishes all of this rehab, he's planning to rent the property out and recoup his money in that way. He also told us that he has a 3% interest rate on his mortgage. So JJ and everyone else, this is a very specific question, but I'm gonna do my best to give you an idea of how we think about these sorts of things, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you. So I'm not saying that this is the right path for you, but this is a framework that I would use and most likely the decision that I would come to. So first and foremost, you want to consider a few things. In a situation like this, and in most situations in general, the goal for us is to make our money do as many jobs as possible. And so in this situation, it sounds like the 2% cashback credit card is the only thing that is really giving some positive value. And so for us, we consider revolving credit, especially things like credit cards with high interest rates, as very similar to cash, because we're just gonna pay it off with cash as soon as possible so that we avoid interest. So the second thing we want to be mindful of is our timeline. We want to avoid as much interest as possible. So if we are using debt, we want to be mindful of what things can be paid off as soon as possible. And maybe for those things we do use like a credit card or some type of revolving debt. But if our plan isn't just to pay things off as we go, and we would prefer to, finish this project before we start putting cash into it, then a longer term loan may be a better option. So the third thing to consider is, at the end of the day, where do we really want this money to come from? Is this money gonna come from my bank account? Do I want my cash flow to cover it? Do I want to refinance this house at the end of this process? Or do I want to do some combination of these things? Deciding where this money comes from will affect your cash flow, your equity, and your savings / your reserves. So I personally would make the decision that maximizes my cash flow while also being something that I feel safe doing. And for us, we would want this house to pay for itself as much as possible rather than us putting money into it. Okay, all that being out of the way, if I were approaching this situation and I could afford to do this with my insurance money or my cash on hand, I would put as much of this on my credit card as possible and use the cash or the insurance money to pay my card off. And in doing that, I would maximize my 2% cash back. And even when I'm paying my contractors, I might even use a service like Plastic to send them a check and pay the extra fee so that I can get points if that math checked out. The fee for Plastic is like 3% last time I checked. And of course, in doing this, I would pay my card off before the statement date, so I didn't mess up my credit with any, missed payments or high utilization. And I might even consider getting another card, ideally business, but personal works too, where I can meet a new sign-up bonus and maybe even get 0% interest for a few months and carry that balance. If I couldn't do it with the cash that I had on hand, I would have to compare the cost of money from my HELOC versus the 5% loan. Off the top of my head, I would imagine that the loan would be cheaper than carrying a balance on my HELOC if I needed to carry it. So in that case, I might go with the loan to get the cash and then approach it in the same way as before, paying with my credit card and then paying that credit card off with the loan. And then at the end of this, maybe refinance to pay off the loan, or let my cash flow just cover the payments on that loan and my mortgage if it's strong enough to do both. But if I really wanted to take this to the next level, I think the lump sum of cash that I have and my insurance money should already be working for me in some way, in addition to feeding back into this property. So for me, I might put those into a vehicle like overfunded whole life insurance, where I can get a guaranteed rate of return of 4%, but still have access to borrow against my money, kind of using my money as collateral for an unstructured line of credit. So basically, I would be able to give that money 3 jobs. I would be able to let it grow at 4%. I'll be able to borrow against it and use that money to invest in this property. And thirdly, I would be able to have some safety in the form of life insurance. In the worst case scenario where I can't pay any of these debts off, maybe I never finish this project, all of the loans that I have that's associated with my life insurance policy will be paid off by the life insurance when I pass, and my family wouldn't have to worry about it. That's probably really complicated. And another thing to keep in mind with this is that you're now taking your cash and using it as leverage. So you'll want to have a plan to pay that loan back, even if it's just, like I said, using the policy itself when you pass away. But yeah, this opens up a whole different world of options and things to consider, and it's probably a lot to just kind of throw at you if you're not familiar with the infinite banking and asset concepts. But if you do want more information on this, I'll go ahead and link the resources that I learned from down in the description, and you can learn from those. And we'll also be putting out content around those at some point in the future. That's really like high level stuff. But yeah, that's what I would do in this case. And we've been getting a few questions, and I think it's important to remember that the point of this channel is to help people and to build a community, not just to teach the concepts that we think are important. So we are going to start a series. This will be the first video in it, where we answer questions from you guys, questions that you leave in the comments, or ask us in our DMs on Instagram, or however else you might interact with us. So we'll do our best to answer them and possibly make a video about them and put them in the series. So thanks, JJ, for getting us started, and we'll see where this goes, or if it goes anywhere at all. But until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.